Welcome to Public Comment. I'm John Dunbar, former mayor of Yountville.
And I'm Alfredo Pedroza, a farmer.
We thought we'd mix it up a little bit this episode and just stay out here on the porch. It's a beautiful spring, almost summer day. And we're just going to talk about a couple things.
Okay, we're going to do a quickie here, John. I like that.
One could call it that.
Okay.
Probably all restrictions should be reevaluated, and it shouldn't take 20 to 30 years.
And that means updating the definition of that.
It is the wine industry against the environment. That's bullshit.
And we're holding on to these old paradigms that I don't think fit.
Not everything has to happen through the general plan.
So why don't I kick it off and change it up, John? It's a beautiful day. There's wind, but I'm very centered right now, John, in spite of the windstorm. But look, we've talked about the wine industry at length and maybe too much, but the white paper that you guys put together, it really stimulated some ideas for me, John. And I've been going to dinners and talking to people. Let me get my phone away so there's no static. But I'm picking up on tones, John, that we haven't gone far enough. And this is serious for a second. So I think what we're all doing, right, the paper that you guys put together to help the wine industry is getting us back to like break even. Well, I think Napa deserves more than that, John. I think we got to be forward looking, and everyone's scared to put ideas out there, right? So some of the things, and I'm not going to attribute it to anyone, right? But the fact that we didn't put weddings on there, why wouldn't we want people to do weddings at wineries, John? Talk about a memorable moment, right? You recently got married, and I officiated, and I bet you're going to remember what wine you had. Right, so why wouldn't you want wine to be part of those moments, John? And you were part of helping create these new ideas. That's a missed opportunity, and I think we're copping out to pushing the line.
And I hear what you're saying, and I agree with some of it, not all of it, because there needs to be a starting point of dialogue. It's always slower than probably most people want, but I also think that it's been long overdue.
Yeah.
It can't be the end of it. It can't just be submit a request letter to the county and expect something to happen. I think one of the things that hasn't happened enough, and it works into what you're saying, is the principles of the wine industry and hospitality need to be more active when the elected officials in the county, in the jurisdictions, are making decisions that affect their businesses and our community as a whole. Everyone needs to be engaged.
I hear you, right? But if you're that winery that has payroll, if you're that winery that just paid your property tax, if you're that winery that has to order glass or has a great payment, like that's the reality of what people are dealing with, John. And I don't think we're meeting the moment with the severity, right? And I'm hearing this because I've been up in Polk Valley. We're up in Carneros. We're up on Atlas Peak. Not asset-wise, just to be clear. I'm just visiting with friends and hearing about what people are going through. I do think the pace is not meeting the urgency. And I do think my challenge is to the vintners and the principals of saying, you also have to be comfortable throwing these ideas out there. So maybe weddings are bad. I happen to think you got to have a conversation around it, because if you're negotiating with normal people, John, you can have an adult conversation around what matters. But you know that you're not negotiating with people that have the industry's best interest. So you do got to talk about it. And by the way, most people that are getting married are 20, 30, 40 years old. Isn't that the market segment that our vintners are trying to reach? Why wouldn't we want to do that? Oh, and by the way, they're going to be there at a winery drinking your wine and probably staying, and their guests are probably staying. So doesn't that support a tourism economy as well? So those are just the win-wins that I see. So we should be talking about it. And I'm a little disappointed that didn't happen.
Well, you're making it sound like there's a conclusion. This is, again, it's the beginning.
It wasn't part of the white paper.
It is the beginning. It's overdue. But I also think a challenge over the last many years has been the industry has been successful without having to do a whole lot.
Agree.
It's different now. And we need the principles in these industries, hospitality, tourism, wine, restaurants, hotels, to reinforce how important they are to this community. Napa Valley is a unique place to live, to travel to. There are billions of dollars that would not be raised were it not for the wine industry in particular. And so I do believe that the pain is more real and more severe for a lot of folks that hadn't been feeling it. But it's also hard to have a single unified voice when you have hundreds of business owners that don't all agree. And that's why I think you bring up the point about weddings and all the advocacy that I've been doing with industry members. They don't all agree. Some don't want weddings. Some don't want more visitation because their situation is small, intimate, private, and they're good with that.
Well, good. Well,
but others are really struggling because they need more people to support their businesses.
Well, we're not prescribing that you got to go drive, a BMW. If you want to drive a BMW, drive a BMW. We're saying if you want to go drive a Mercedes, drive a Mercedes, right? So this is not about prescriptive. It's about allowing people to do more. Now, the other one, again, it's going to probably be controversial, is I think the definition of ag is outdated. And I know that's hard, John, because I was up there and I defended it, right? We look at ag in a very hierarchical way. Wineries are there to make wine. And I think we are reaching a point where that may not be the primary reason a winery is there anymore, John. Now, I'm not advocating for get rid of the production side. I think to be genuine, you have to have a component of production at a winery. What I'm saying is we have rules like the 60-40 rule that we require 60% of your footprint to be production related. Why are we doing that? You and I know that wineries are not making money off that aspect. They're making money on selling wine. And that has to include tasting. That has to include other experiences. And that means updating the definition of ag. And that's going to hurt because we try to be purists. But what we're seeing is people fail. We're seeing wineries go on public auction. We're seeing vineyards be sold. We're seeing wineries be sold, right? We're seeing financial institutions no longer lending on inventory, right? Think about it, John. They're no longer lending on the production outcome of what a winery does. Now, I'm not saying completely throw out the definition of ag out. I'm saying you have to put it on the table for discussion. And that's going to ruffle a lot of feathers. But I think we're at a point now where you do need to have that honest conversation around what is agriculture today and what is agriculture going to be tomorrow, and stop defending what agriculture was.
I think that's a key point that you just touched on, which is a lot is outdated. It doesn't mean that everything needs to be erased and start over. It means there needs to be an honest and fact-based, science-based evaluation of what was written 50 years ago or in 1990 doesn't apply the same way as it used to. Most restrictions should be, probably all restrictions should be reevaluated, and it shouldn't take 20 to 30 years. I know, dare I bring up the general plan? Hold Jesus, on. Gosh. I was just thirsty. But really, I mean, people say, oh, it's outdated. It doesn't serve us today. Well, right. It needs to be updated. There needs to be reforms. Not everything has to happen through the general plan. That's going to take at least 3 years, probably 4. It's almost $5 million just to have the evaluation done before it is even voted on. So it is a slow process, but meanwhile, changes can be made. Reforms can be made. People have been fearful of changing anything because those that have said, well, once you change one thing, you're going to change everything. No, that's not true.
But I think you got to be open to hearing what the change is that's needed to thrive. And again, I'm not advocating government needs to ensure businesses succeed. What I'm advocating for is government needs to create an environment where businesses can succeed. And we're holding on to these old paradigms that I don't think fit. And that's where the tension is. And that means getting comfortable, like around the food and wine pairing. I don't want wineries to be restaurants, John. But I do think wineries should be able to create, experiences that feature Napa Valley, and that can include food, right? Again, I don't want someone going to lunch at a winery, right? They should go to our favorite restaurants for that, John, but they should have an experience that brings people to the valley, that features Napa Valley, right, in an authentic way, and that has to include some type of food. Again, that's going to make people uncomfortable, but we have to do that.
Fundamentally, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is the us versus them. That
What do you mean by that?
There are some people that have pitted the wine industry against the environment. That's bullshit. Because as we've said before on this podcast, there are no better stewards of the land than the people that have invested in protecting, preserving, and using the land for the fruits of the labor, literally. And there are some that say the wine industry is bad. They're trying to ruin the earth and the environment and natural habitats. I don't believe that we're seeing that. And I don't believe that is really the problem that some people are presenting. But that's where the resistance is, that there are some that say, if you change anything about the wine industry and allow more flexibility, because the entire industry has changed over decades, that means you're going to eliminate all the protections. That's not true.
So I agree, John. It's not this false choice, but people have made it to be that, right? But what I will say, though, is we also, as we're going to have a conversation around defining what ag might be in the future or what that definition looks like, we also have to be honest of, did we grow the right way? And that means looking at, we have 55,000 acres planted in ag, or maybe it's 50,000 now because some people have pulled out. Should we have 50? Should Napa be 40,000 acres? I don't know. But no one is having those high-level conversations around, do we need to farm everywhere, right? Because everyone was chasing cab in areas that cab shouldn't have been planted. And I'm not going to call out AVA, so I have nothing one AVA is better than all. But
now that you're a farmer.
Of course. But what I mean is, it's that level of maturity. And I do think Ted Hall was right in he's writing, and he talked about, how in MLB you have a commissioner, and the commissioner makes sure, that the franchise are working and everyone's making money. And I think our industry groups failed us in that way. There was no thought. They expected government, my opinion only, to kind of do some of the invisible hand. And we're at a point where we need to talk about it. And that means having these hard conversations that might divide people. Well, that's what the Ag Preserve did, John. We heard about families fighting, and I think we're fearful of that. And I'm not going to blame the environmentalists, because they're doing their job to fight, John, for what they believe in. I think the industry has not been bullish enough to take responsibility for redefining where the industry is going to go and acknowledging you're going to piss some people off, John, because you're right. There is no consensus because vintners don't agree. Well, when no one agrees, what do, John? You sit back and you let it happen. Enough of that. Like, own it, have these conversations, acknowledge that we need to have these uncomfortable, discussions among each other, and see where the cards go.
You bring up Ted's Substack articles. I think they're very thoughtful. He goes very in depth on his experience in the wine industry and his perspective. I think it's a very smart perspective. Where I differ from his analogy with Major League Baseball, when you look at it, Major League Baseball is run by billionaires and corporations. And there are only so many, 3, 4 dozen. I don't even remember how many, 30-some teams. Maybe I'm bitter because my Oakland A's have left and they're stopping in Sacramento on the way to Las Vegas, and I've lost all my sports teams from Oakland. But I do think that it's very different where the wine industry has the billionaires, it has the corporate ownership, but it also has generations of families that aren't looking at this necessarily as purely a lucrative business to be in. It's a cultural thing. It's a generational thing. It's one of the reasons that Napa Valley is so unique, that it's not just the wealthiest people having a good time with their hobby. This is hardworking farmers that are trying to survive. And in some cases, The restrictions that are put on by the county are making it even harder than it already is. And I think at the county level, the state, like I said, even at the federal level, but we can't do a whole lot at the federal level. We need our federal elected officials to do even more to support us locally.
Yeah.
We need our industry groups to support the members more locally. It isn't just about brand protection or global marketing. That's important, absolutely. Yeah. But meanwhile, we're seeing families have to sell because they can't afford to stay in business, and that's really scary for the future of the Napa Valley.
Well, I just want to end on 2 points here, right? I agree that it is different when you're dealing with billionaires, but imagine having, how many baseball franchises are 30 something, whatever it is? Imagine trying to get 30 billionaires to agree, right? That's a hard job. And what I mean by that is someone painted a picture of where they're going, what the vision is, whether they were going to allow the franchises to happen or what contracts they were going to make. There was vision. And to me, the only thing I would disagree with you on is it's great to have generational family businesses. It's great to have stewardship. At the end of the day, if a business doesn't make money, it's not a business. And you will see that by people selling, right? So I do think fundamentally, Napa has to go back to the basics of agriculture has to be economically viable for it to work. And if it doesn't, it ain't gonna work, John. And guess what? It just takes a couple of people to say, you know what, we're done with the ag preserve. Let's go put it before the voters. You don't think people are thinking about that, John? They will.
Well, I think we've touched a few times on what happens if not agriculture.
Correct.
And it doesn't mean it's going to be natural habitat, national park. These are private properties that people have invested significantly. Sometimes they're life savings.
Correct.
Sometimes they're families' generational life savings. And there needs to be a reasonableness to the future, right? So if in fact we have this kind of natural market correction and not everyone is guaranteed success, which I think is a reasonable position, but to continue to make it more challenging to force that hand is what I think people are pushing back on. That other areas, go to Solano, go to Paso, go to even Sonoma in some cases, where they don't have the same challenges and restrictions at the local level, they're saying, let us just have a level playing field. Other industries are not regulated the same way, specifically as the wine industry is. And so why is that? Well, people go back to, because the wine industry itself decided to put these regulations in place. Well, now that's being used against the same industry.
Well, look, I think you said something that's spot on. If people think that by ag failing, we're going to go back to more open space and scenic beauty, they are wrong. That might be a short-term thing they get while you piss off enough people. Say, you know what? Enough of us are sitting on vacant land that we can't afford anymore to pay the property tax. Let's get together and change it. That will happen. Whether that happens now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we could lose this, John. It's just having a critical mass to say enough is enough.
Well, and to that point, you play it out even further. Property values, which also mean property taxes, are dramatically reduced. The county has massive budget problems because the county specifically is so heavily reliant on the success of the wine industry, hospitality, tourism. I have no problem with that. I think it's what makes Napa Valley so unique. But as you allow it to erode, it's also eroding the financial foundation that we have here.
Yeah.
And so then you're going to start seeing more people losing their jobs, more people defaulting on their property, and the outcomes are not good.
I agree. Now, John, I know you might have wanted to talk about news and the fact that newspapers going out of business, but that's so boring. I'd rather talk about BottleRock, John. Like I think when this airs, BottleRock might be over, but I just want to underscore the endeavor that the BottleRock folks, the leadership has gone.
I'm gonna drink the BottleRock.
You should. How lucky are we to have what is it, 40,000 people. They're sold out again, John, in our backyard.
That's each day.
Each day. And people can complain about the lineup and all that, but people are still going. I'm going, you're going. And how lucky are we to have that in our backyard? I know we say, John, but you take it for granted. It's a huge undertaking, and you rarely hear about, knock on wood, about incidents because it's well done. It represents Napa Valley in such a good way. And yes, I see a lot of people I don't know, but we see a lot of people that we do know, John. So these are locals that are enjoying it and are partaking in the fun. It's music. And I think there's something cool about that, to say that it's happening here. You're part of the expo, John, so you have a little bit more to do. But I do want to call it out because sometimes we just gloss over it. And I think one of those guys, one of the BottleRock guys told me, I think they walked like 27 miles, right? That's a freaking marathon, right? Of how much they have to work to make it happen. And I want to give them a shout out because they deserve it.
There have been a couple different studies done on the financial impact locally and regionally, BottleRock specifically. And it's over $60 million in direct local financial benefit through hotel, TOT, sales tax, other businesses absorbing all these visitors that are coming in for 3 days during the Memorial Day weekend. Massive financial benefits. The city of Napa getting significant tax from BottleRock itself.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of street paving in the city of Napa. Guess what? Some of that money is, Measure G.
Kate Miller
But
streets.
some of it is also coming from the general fund and the public works budgets that are supported by BottleRock. I'll give you a couple quick anecdotes that I love to share.
Ooh.
Years ago, there was a property, a homeowner, just a couple blocks away from the expo property. And talk about capitalism at its finest. It was a person that was opposing BottleRock because of the traffic and the noise. And when Jerry and I were going on the property for one of the days, the festival, we walked by this house, and he had the homeowner had a big plywood sign in the front yard, no BottleRock, parking $20. So he was selling parking spaces on his home site, but he was opposed to BottleRock. So there he was, making the best of the situation. But also the value it has brought to downtown Napa especially, but also throughout the valley, that people are coming here early before the festival starts. They're going downtown. There are after parties happening at restaurants, at tasting rooms, clubs, that are using, I use that for live music venues. Well, you want me to call it live music venues?
Yeah.
And now there's a vibrancy downtown when the festival night ends. People are still supporting local businesses. That would not be happening.
Well, I just love going and seeing all the food vendors that are our friends, right? And they're there. The owners are there slinging burritos and hamburgers. And I think that's just awesome. And that's what I mean about it's us thriving. So when you talk about who makes money, yes, these artists make money, but our restaurant friends are making money, right? Taco trucks are making money.
And how many people are they employing locally?
And I just be proud of what we've been creating, John. So I felt maybe bad because I was hammering the wine industry, earlier, and I want to acknowledge.
You wanted to purge yourself?
No, I don't need to purge. I'm speaking the truth. They got to do more, So step up, stop complaining.
Something else that people forget, the three guys that have founded the festival together are local guys. And they took over after the first year.
Yeah.
That was what I would say a musical success and a financial disaster. They were willing to take on that brand and turn it into something that's been fantastic.
Yeah.
And they are very community focused. They reach out to have multiple neighborhood meetings leading up to the festival, making sure people's neighborhoods are protected and they're aware of what's happening. They've tweaked traffic flows, all that. But I really want to remind folks how they have brought in, to your point about local partners, before, during, and after the noon to 10 p.m. every day experience at the expo, it's really benefiting the whole community. I was listening to an XM radio station that's based in Miami that was talking about BottleRock, and the DJ was saying, "You'll see me at BottleRock. Look for me. I'm going to this artist and that artist, and I'll be posting all about it."
Love it.
I mean, that's what we really can be proud of for the hard work that they put in.
Cheers to that, John.
Absolutely.
Keep on rocking.
So, Alfredo, just a quick wrap up from our last episode that we just had out here on the porch of this beautiful sunny afternoon. We could have spent our whole episode talking about the June primary, and the fact that we don't even have people running to oppose incumbents anymore, it seems like, except at the federal level, where there's definitely a real election happening with our congressional race. But all the other races are pretty much status quo. Whether that's a good or bad thing, people are making that choice. But what we really wanted to focus on are two things. One that's really fundamentally important to us is, what do we do to protect and preserve long-term the wine industry? But also, what do we need to do as a community to make sure we have a really solid future for Napa Valley?
2 words: term limits, John. If you did term limits, I think you'd get to what you want to do. And I would apply that to us when we were there. People could say you should have said that when we were in office. I wasn't that wise then, John. I'm much wiser now. But I think whether people are running unopposed or not, that's a community's decision. If they don't want to run and they think this electorate, these electors are doing a good job, power to them. But I don't think people should camp out, because I think it breeds complacency, and we need more than that. And I think this is just a period we're going through. You're seeing it from the governor's race to all these races. It's a hard moment.
Yeah, but I hear from people that are frustrated with some of the leadership at different levels. You hear different things from different cities. I know, but then it stops there, and that's what's really frustrating. Is if you love who's in office and what the decisions are that they're making, then that's great. Reelect them. But the fact that there's nobody even willing to run to have the conversations during a campaign, during an election cycle, to say, is this the direction that we all really want to go? Or is it just because nobody else wants to try? That's where I start to get really frustrated.
Well, tune into a council meeting, tune into a board meeting, and then wonder why people aren't running, John.
Well, we've talked about the toxicity that's related to being in office, and we both know that. And so I do see people, at least I hear from people that say they want change, but then you've got to step up, you've got to run.
Probably shouldn't say this, but on Friday,
please do that.
I was driving by and I'm seeing protesters on a corner, and they have every right to protest. And I'm not trying to say they shouldn't be doing that, but I just hope that people aren't taking the easy way out, John, in terms of change. Yes, holding up a sign on a street corner is part of representation, it's part of freedom of speech, but it shouldn't end there. And I'm getting at is, I hear from people, I don't like, okay, well, great. You telling me hopefully is not you thinking you've done something. Go be part of it. Drive, get on the committee, create a different committee, create something that is going to effectuate real change. So
we can end on a positive note.
You brought us down this rabbit hole.
We wrap it up, but again, we're recording this before BottleRock, but we know that the weather's going to be fantastic. The crowds are going to be energized and happy to be here in Napa Valley. It's really one of the biggest assets that we have here in the Valley. I'm sure we'll have stories to tell after it happens, so we'll follow up in a future episode.
Well, and hopefully people are drinking, their H2O, but maybe some Napa wine to keep hydrated and stimulate the economy.
Enjoying some wonderful Napa chef cuisine.
That too. You got to eat and you got to drink, John, to be responsible.
I could toast to that.
Cheers.